January 22nd, 2023. Just past dawn, the city of Bogotá, Colombia, was waking up. In the quiet shadows near Bogotá Park, a sanitation worker began his routine, a job that never truly surprises him until today. As he dug through a dumpster behind a row of apartment blocks, something unusual caught his eye. A blue suitcase, tightly wrapped in black tape, sitting at the very bottom. At first he thought it was just another piece of unwanted luggage, discarded like so many others. But when he leaned in closer, his heart seemed to stop. There, half protruding from beneath the lid, was unmistakably a human head. The man staggered back, his hands trembling. What he'd discovered was not just a body, but a crime scene so disturbing that it would haunt the city for months to come. Without hesitation, the worker drove several blocks away, heart pounding, before finally calling the police. Within minutes, a team of officers arrived on the scene. What they saw stunned even the most seasoned detectives. A woman's lifeless form, twisted and confined inside the battered suitcase, surrounded by garbage bags. The brutality was clear, but the details didn't add up. There were no gunshot wounds, no obvious stab marks, no evidence that the body had been dismembered. One detail, however, stood out. The woman was dressed in a nightgown, a belt fastened loosely around her waist. Did the killer strike while she was sleeping? Was this an act of blind rage or cold calculation? Next to the suitcase sat a black cardboard box. Inside, police found the victim's student ID, a password for an online certificate, and personal belongings, evidence the killer had left behind, either by mistake or intention. Odd, isn't it? Most criminals would destroy such traces. Who was this woman? And why would her killer leave these fragments of her identity, almost as if they wanted her to be found? As the police contacted the woman's family, a picture began to emerge. The victim was Valentina Trespalosios, a young, promising DJ with dreams, friends, and a life ahead of her. But the autopsy would reveal something even darker. Multiple blows to her head, injuries scattered across her body, hemorrhages, and strange burns. The cause of death? Asphyxiation. The challenge for investigators was clear. Who killed Valentina, and why? In the following hours, the city would hold its breath, gripped by fear and confusion. But for the detectives, this was just the beginning. How do you solve a murder when the brutality overshadows the motive? And what secrets were waiting to be uncovered in the days ahead? A rising star. The life of Valentina Trespalosios. To understand the tragedy, we have to step back. Who was Valentina Trespalosios, the young woman whose life was so brutally cut short? Born in 2001 in Bogotá, Colombia, Valentina was more than just a face in the crowd. She was a daughter, a sister, and for many, a beacon of youthful energy and creativity. At university, she pursued studies at the Faculty of Commerce and International Business. But it was music, not business, that truly made her come alive. From childhood, Valentina was drawn to rhythm and melody. Her natural ear for music quickly blossomed into real talent. After earning a professional DJ diploma, she wasted no time diving into Colombia's vibrant nightlife. For 3 years, Valentina built her reputation, playing to crowded rooms, making new friends, and carving out a space for herself in a tough, competitive industry. She performed not just across Colombia, but in Chile, Mexico, Brazil, and Peru, sharing stages with international artists and taking the pulse of every city she visited. Her dedication paid off. Valentina was crowned the best amateur DJ in Colombia for electronic music. a remarkable achievement for someone so young. She was active on social media, regularly sharing the highs and lows of her daily grind. Fans flocked to her pages, following her journey from local parties to major festivals. Everyone agreed. Valentina's star was rising. But behind every headline, there's a private life. Friends and followers saw a woman full of laughter, optimism, and hope. But Valentina's heart belonged to someone special, John Poulos, an American she'd met online at the end of 2021. Their romance was no secret. She posted about him, shared their travels, their plans, their dreams. To outsiders, their relationship looked perfect. Two young people, drawn together across continents, chasing a future filled with possibility. Yet, as anyone who's lived long enough knows, appearances can deceive. Beneath the surface of Valentina's public life, subtle tensions were growing. Friends noticed changes, family voiced concerns, and while Valentina's career flourished, shadows were gathering just outside the spotlight. Did she realize how dangerous those shadows could be? Or was she, like so many before her, convinced that nothing bad could ever really happen to her? In stories like these, the truth is rarely simple. But one thing was certain: Valentina Trespalosios had everything to live for. The world was watching her, but so was someone else, someone who would soon shatter her world forever. The turning point: love, jealousy, and hidden tensions. On the surface, Valentina's life sparkled with promise. A successful career, growing fame, and a romance that seemed straight out of a fairy tale. But as 2022 turned into 2023, those closest to her began to sense that not everything was as it seemed. John Poulos, the American man who'd captured Valentina's heart, seemed devoted, maybe even too devoted. He sent her money regularly, paid for cosmetic procedures, lip fillers, cheekbone enhancements, and even urged her to consider bigger changes, like breast implants. He talked openly about a future together. Marriage, a life in Colombia. On paper, he was the picture of commitment. Yet beneath these gestures lurked a troubling truth. John's affection was clouded by jealousy and possessiveness. He wasn't just attentive, he was controlling. He hired a private detective to watch Valentina's movements and monitor her friends. Even casual nights out became sources of tension. Whenever Valentina mentioned seeing friends, John's suspicions flared. He peppered her with questions, casting doubt where there should have been trust. Valentina confided in her family about John's behavior, voicing concerns that he was becoming increasingly paranoid. Her family, especially her mother, grew uneasy. But love, as it often does, found a way to blur the warning signs. Valentina believed she could manage John's moods. She told herself, and those around her, that things would settle down once they built a life together in Bogotá. In January 2023, John made his move. He flew to Colombia, rented an apartment in North Bogotá, and began preparing for marriage. Security cameras captured him arriving late at night, dragging a blue suitcase that, in hindsight, would become a symbol of horror. Over the next 2 days, John and Valentina began moving her belongings into the new apartment, making videos for friends, and planning their future. But all was not well behind closed doors. Their text messages from that period, later reviewed by investigators, revealed mounting arguments. A simple disagreement over Valentina attending a party without John escalated into accusations and hurt feelings. The jealousy that had simmered for months was boiling over. On January 20th, after hours of tension and missed connections, the couple finally reunited. Surveillance cameras documented every moment, as they carried bags into their new home, images that would later become evidence. Family and friends, meanwhile, received messages and video calls from Valentina. She seemed happy. She showed off her new place, laughed with her loved ones, and even told her mother she'd be spending the night in with John. No one knew this would be her last night alive. Looking back, investigators would ask themselves, were the warning signs always there? Could anyone have predicted the tragedy about to unfold? Or was it already too late? The point of no return passed, with no way to turn back the clock. The last night, unraveling hours before the tragedy, January 20th, 2023. The evening began with ordinary routines, moving suitcases, setting up a new apartment, sending cheerful videos to friends. But for Valentina Trespalosios, these moments marked the beginning of her final hours. Surveillance cameras caught every detail. By 7:00 p.m., Valentina and John were seen entering their new apartment, arms full of her belongings. Inside, they appeared to settle in, sharing brief moments of happiness. Yet, as the night wore on, cracks appeared beneath the surface. The couple's WhatsApp messages revealed subtle friction, disagreements over plans, questions of trust. John's jealousy, which had always been present, now simmered just below the surface. Around 3:00 a.m., the couple hailed a taxi to a nightclub in South Bogota. Valentina had arranged a guest DJ performance, one last night immersed in the music she loved. At the club, Valentina commanded the DJ booth, John never far from her side, his watchful gaze constant. By 5:00 a.m., her set was over, and the pair moved to the club's office to chat with the owner and friends. No one could have guessed these would be the last people, outside of John, to see her alive. By sunrise, the couple returned home. To her friends and family, Valentina appeared content, even optimistic about her future. She spoke to a close friend by phone, saying she planned to stay in with John, maybe cook, or go out for a quick dinner. Nothing unusual. At 9:00 p.m., she made her final video call. On the other end was her younger brother, who saw Valentina lying beside John, both looking relaxed, almost carefree. But just before 11:00 p.m., building security cameras caught a telling moment. Valentina peeking out of her apartment, John pacing anxiously in the corridor, rubbing his face, calling the elevator, his nerves visible. Did something happen in those silent hours? Was there a final argument, a confrontation, a loss of control? The next morning, John was seen leaving the apartment with trash bags and later, with the heavy blue suitcase now infamous in this case. He looked around nervously, checked for witnesses, loaded the suitcase and bags into a car, and drove off. At that time, no one knew the horror that had unfolded behind closed doors. No one knew that in the space of a single night, a promising life had been extinguished, and that the city would soon wake up to a mystery as dark as any in its history. In moments like these, the lines between everyday life and tragedy blur. Could anyone have foreseen the violence lurking just out of sight? Or was it always there, hiding in plain view, waiting for one unguarded night to reveal itself, the crime scene, uncovering the truth? Morning came quietly to Bogota on January 22nd, but peace was shattered by a single call to the police. Within minutes, sirens pierced the air, drawing neighbors to their windows as investigators surrounded the dumpster near Bogota Park. What they found inside was horrifying. Valentina's body, carefully stuffed into a blue suitcase, her head visible beneath the cracked lid. Around her, personal items, a student ID, documents, a black box, lay scattered, almost as if her identity was being displayed for the world to see. For detectives, this was no ordinary crime scene. There were no signs of a violent struggle in the apartment or the dumpster. The body showed no bullet or knife wounds, and it hadn't been dismembered. Instead, the autopsy revealed something more chilling: multiple blunt force injuries, hemorrhages, and, most telling of all, the unmistakable marks of asphyxiation. The presence of burns, bruises, and a belt around her nightgown told a story of an attack that may have begun while Valentina was asleep. Investigators worked methodically. Surveillance footage from the apartment complex soon became a gold mine. On the tapes, they saw John moving bags and suitcases in and out of the building, alone. The timeline matched perfectly with Valentina's last known contact with her family. Neighbors reported nothing unusual, no screams in the night, no disturbances. The killer, it seemed, had worked with eerie calm and precision. As detectives dug deeper, more disturbing details emerged. John's sudden disappearance, the deletion of all his social media profiles, and his failure to answer calls from Valentina's family all pointed in one direction. The police also traced John's rented silver sedan across the city, capturing him on cameras as he nervously searched for a place to dispose of the suitcase. By 3:00 p.m., John was seen near the park, scanning his surroundings before discarding the suitcase and bag in the dumpster. His actions were swift, almost mechanical. Hours later, he was spotted at El Dorado International Airport, vanishing into the crowds. For investigators, these clues formed a chilling mosaic. The evidence was mounting, but the biggest questions remained. Why would John, who seemed so devoted, take such a brutal step? What drove him to destroy the life of a woman who had trusted him so? And, perhaps most chilling of all, could anyone have stopped him before it was too late? The manhunt, chasing a shadow across borders. As news of Valentina Trespalosios' murder spread, the city of Bogotá reeled in disbelief. Shock turned to outrage as details of the crime emerged, and all eyes turned toward a single suspect, John Poulos. Within hours of the discovery, Colombian authorities launched a massive investigation, determined to track down the man last seen with Valentina alive. Detectives worked around the clock. Surveillance footage provided a roadmap of John's movements, from the apartment to the dumpster to the airport. Every camera angle, every blurry image was scrutinized for clues. Law enforcement agencies issued a national alert. But by then, John Poulos had already vanished, slipping out of the country before anyone could stop him. The investigation quickly became international. The Colombian Ministry of Security announced a reward for information leading to John's capture, and Interpol was notified. His name and face were broadcast across borders. The pressure was on, not just for justice, but for answers. Why would John flee if he was innocent? Why erase all traces of himself online? These questions haunted investigators as they worked to reconstruct his escape. Meanwhile, back in Bogotá, forensic experts and detectives combed through more than 300 hours of security footage and digital messages. A breakthrough came when Valentina's close friend delivered her laptop to police. Valentina had forgotten to log out of her WhatsApp account, leaving behind a trove of messages and photos. Among them, a chilling image. John posing with the very suitcase that would later be used to conceal Valentina's body. The suitcase, its color and style, matched perfectly. The international dragnet paid off quickly. On January 24th, Panamanian authorities detained John Poulos at Tocumen International Airport, just as he was about to board a flight to Turkey. Colombian prosecutors began extradition proceedings at once. The suspect was finally in custody, but for detectives, this was only the beginning. What would John say under interrogation? Would he confess or try to deflect blame? What secrets would his digital trail reveal? The world waited for answers as investigators prepared to confront a man accused of one of the most disturbing crimes in recent memory. Sometimes, justice moves slowly. But this time, the noose was tightening, and the truth, however ugly, was about to come to light. In the courtroom, motives, testimony, and a portrait of obsession. With John Poulos in custody, the case against him shifted from the streets of Bogotá to the solemn halls of justice. The world's eyes turned to the courtroom as prosecutors laid out the evidence, the surveillance footage, the digital messages, the chilling photos, and above all, the pattern of behavior that had turned a romance into a nightmare. From the start, Poulos denied any guilt. He claimed innocence, arguing that police procedures during his arrest in Panama were flawed and demanded legal representation in his native language. The trial was tense, lasting over 5 hours in its first session alone, and required an interpreter. But the evidence told its own story, one that was harder and harder to deny. Forensic testimony painted a harrowing picture. The medical examiner described the cause of death: mechanical asphyxiation, the marks of a rope tightened around Valentina's neck, and signs of violence that suggested she was attacked while asleep. The prosecution revealed Poulos's history: an American from Wisconsin, divorced, with 3 children, and a restraining order filed against him by his ex-wife for domestic violence. Other women came forward, recounting disturbing experiences online. One described hours spent on adult sites, sudden changes in personality, and even explicit threats. In one chilling exchange, John had messaged a woman, "That was a sufficient reason for murder out of jealousy." The defense struggled to explain John's behavior: deleting social media, fleeing the country, lying low. The prosecution's narrative was simple: obsession turned to control, control to violence. For Valentina, what began as a romance became a dangerous game of power she never consented to play. As the hearing progressed, the question of motive loomed large. Was it pure jealousy? A desperate need to dominate? Or something deeper and more disturbing? A darkness that had always been there, hiding behind gifts and promises. With each witness, each piece of evidence, the picture of John Poulos grew clearer. A man whose charm masked a history of manipulation and violence, whose jealousy finally erupted into tragedy. But the legal battle was far from over. Would justice be served, or would loopholes and technicalities derail the case? The outcome, for now, hung in the balance, and the world waited, hoping for an answer that would bring peace to Valentina's grieving family. Verdict, consequences, and lessons learned. As the legal process advanced, the weight of evidence against John Poulos became overwhelming. Every piece fit together: the surveillance footage, the digital traces, the witness testimony, and the forensic science all pointed in one direction. For the family of Valentina Trespalosios, the courtroom was both a place of anguish and a glimmer of hope. A hope that justice might finally be served for a daughter lost far too soon. The prosecution made its case clear. This was not a crime of passion, nor a tragic accident. It was premeditated, fueled by obsession, jealousy, and the desperate need for control. Colombian law provided for the harshest penalty, up to 50 years in prison for premeditated murder. As the closing arguments were delivered, silence filled the room. Would the court see through the suspect's evasions and denials? Would Valentina's voice, though silenced, be heard through the evidence she left behind? The verdict, when it came, was resolute. Guilty. For Valentina's loved ones, the sense of closure was real, but the pain could never truly disappear. Her mother, her friends, and her colleagues remembered a vibrant soul, a rising star whose light was extinguished before its time. The city of Bogotá mourned, but also rallied around the call for vigilance, warning others about the hidden dangers that can lurk behind digital screens and charming strangers. Law enforcement officials reflected on the case with a sober sense of duty. The investigation had been exhaustive, over 300 hours of footage, countless interviews, and tireless forensic work. But as one detective quietly noted, sometimes the monsters don't hide in the shadows. Sometimes they smile at us from across the table. This case became a stark reminder for everyone. Trust is precious, and new relationships should never be taken lightly. In a world where love can cross continents in a click, the risks are real. And sometimes, the consequences are irreversible. For viewers, Valentina's story is more than a cautionary tale. It's a call to stay vigilant, to listen to the warning signs, and to protect those we care about. As we close this chapter, we remember a young woman full of promise, and we vow to never let her memory fade into silence. If you want more true stories like this, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Sometimes, the most important thing we can do is pay attention, because behind every headline, there's a life, and behind every tragedy, a lesson worth remembering. The brutal murder of rising DJ Valentina Trespalosios shocked Colombia and the world, exposing the darkness that can hide behind seemingly perfect love. From her rapid career ascent to the obsessive relationship that ended her life, this case is a stark reminder that even those closest to us may carry dangerous secrets. Thanks to determined investigators and the courage of witnesses, justice was served. But the pain of loss lingers, urging us all to be vigilant in a digital age where trust can be a matter of life and death. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Stay tuned for more real-life mysteries, and remember, sometimes the greatest dangers are hiding in plain sight. Protect yourself and your loved ones by staying aware and always listening to your instincts.